Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mike's Miniatures, the place for all things mini wargaming. And in today's fun episode of Faction Friday, we're going to be going over a chapter that I actually find rather interesting that is part of the Last Wall Protocol. This chapter is typically just known as the Soul Drinkers. Now, the Soul Drinkers are technically an extinct chapter, but with the Indominus Crusade in the lore of Warhammer 40k, they are now getting basically made a remade chapter of Primaris Space Marines. So you could totally now just use Primaris models to create this army altogether here. But let's just go over some fun facts about this army right here. They were their founding is unknown. It was thought to be during the second founding, about the same time as the Black Templars and the Crimson Fists, and they were thought to be successors of the Imperial Fists. But they during one of the main stories of the Soul Drinkers, it was discovered that, hey, we're not exactly sure what gene seed you guys are from, because it doesn't match what the Imperial Fists are. So now you can kind of say, when you're creating this chapter, you don't necessarily have to play them as Imperial Fists if you don't want to. You could play them as any chapter if you want to say this is actually the one that they came from instead. So that kind of, for narrative campaigns and whatnot, if you're going to create this chapter, you could totally just go that way. If I were to create this chapter for myself, would just still say that they are Imperial Fists now. It's been corrected, and here we go. The reason this chapter doesn't exist anymore is because they were declared excommunicate traitoris by the Inquisition due to the extremely high levels of mutation and obvious corruption by chaos. And that was basically mainly due to their last chapter master, Seraphon, who was a librarian model. If you remember, some of the librarians are basically Space Marine wizards that can tap into the warp and do, for lack of better words, magic in the 40k universe. They're kind of psychics and things like that. Well, the Soul Drinkers had a tradition within their chapter that if the chapter master seemed to be dissuade, or if you didn't agree with it, it was kind of like trial by combat kind of a deal. And Seraphon, with their former chapter master, who I can't remember his exact name, were we're starting to battle for one reason or another, and Seraphon only won that challenge because the Chaos Gods reached to him, and they warped his body to where his whole lower half basically became like a spider, which is interesting when you think about that. And he still considered himself a loyalist and thought, this is a gift from the Emperor, though how would 8 spider legs with adamantium like pincers be a gift from the Emperor? So the Inquisition kind of could see that, no, that's Chaos Taint, and he denied it would be Chaos Taint, and thus the chapter did it after he killed the former chapter master and claimed that title. The Soul Drinkers had a mini civil war in which the ones who were loyal to the original chapter master were all wiped out by Seraphon and his followers. And Seraphon, even though they viewed themselves as loyal to the Emperor, they didn't really view themselves as loyal to the Imperium of Man itself, or to the Inquisition or anything like that, just to the Emperor. So they were loyalist traitors. I think the Dark Angels could probably relate to these guys pretty well. Just kidding, just kidding. We all know you're loyal, maybe. But this is the some official artwork of Seraphon before his transformation right here. As you can see, bright purple armor. The weapon casings are usually black or white. It just unique here. And how the chapter basically got wiped out is after they were made Traitoris, and they were being hunted down by the Imperial Fists and a few other Space Marine chapters. And the Soul Drinkers had the bright idea of, well, if we're going to convince you one way or another by taking over everything. And they tried to take over the Phalanx, And by this point, Seraphon was totally corrupted by chaos in his mind, and he was opening up basically a portal to demonkind in the Phalanx, the chapter's Fortress Monastery for the Imperial Fists. But there was a Dreadnought character who I don't remember his name because I haven't read this book in a long, long time here. It was a quick read for a while ago. But basically, the Soul Drinkers, almost all the chapter realized the chapter master, this guy's messed up. We're going to They killed him, and to help redeem themselves, they fought off the Chaos Demons, and the last remaining survivors, which was next to none, fought the demons back through the warp hole that was created and sealed it from the other side, and they are presumed destroyed and dead at this point. And the Imperial Fist, impressed with the bravery of the Soul Drinkers and their attempts to make themselves whole with the Emperor again, gave them the total honors that they had when they helped with the War of the Beast in the Last Wall Protocol, and honor. And in the official Imperial records, there's no showing that they fell to chaos. They were just an honored chapter that was completely wiped out. And now in the Indominus Crusade, like I said, you can start creating these guys again. So how would you start one of these armies right here? This is kind of how I would start it now with the Primaris. As an example, we're trying to keep with the thematic list builds that I do here. Try to keep it as cheap as possible with 5 boxes or less if possible. In this case, I'm going to do it with 4 boxes with this first army list here. First box would be the Librarian, and then get a box of 10 Intercessors for your basic battle line choice. For your elite, do a box of Eradicators for that to help you with the siege and heavy meltas kind of a deal. And just because it looks cool, and I like having a vehicle with the Space Marine Army. Maybe get a Brutalis Dreadnought. This example army is about 470 points. At Games Workshop pricing at time of recording, it's about $242.50, but on Amazon, at the same time, you could get it for almost $40 less at $207.13, which isn't too bad considering what it has. Now, this is just if you were just wanting to buy it. Cheaper boxes, I say cheaper relative, Warhammer is not cheap, but as a cheaper box here, 1 box at a time, this is how I would slowly build it. But if you want to go kind of gung-ho and use a combat patrol to help get you more models in one, I would do it like this here. Just get the Dark Angels Combat Patrol. I love that box because it's just universal for almost any kind of Space Marine chapter. You get your Captain and Gravis armor, your 3 Blade Guard veterans, 5 Hellblasters, and 10 Intercessors again. Still get yourself a Librarian because this chapter was known for being psyker heavy, as well as being basically siege experts for spaceships, battleships. So that's why I like having the heavy weapons and like the Hellblasters and the Eradicators in the list. And then just to keep with the Dreadnought themed rather than a vehicle, just that Brutalis Dreadnought. This is just 3 boxes and comes to 660 points. At time of recording, it's about $288 MSRP. So at Amazon, you could get it for $233.13 right here. Pretty self-explanatory. This is a slightly more expensive, but you get more models for your buck, basically. And this is how I would paint these models right here. You'll want to get a purple paint. In this case, as you can see, this is the purple that I chose for this model here. Do a Baden Black for the black undersuit, Lead Belcher for the silver. I did Retributor armor for the gold details, for like the chest aquila and the gold trim on the shoulder pads here. And then you want to do like a Wraithbone or a pure white for the knee pad. As you saw in some of the official art, they usually have 1 knee pad that's white, and the Rhinox hide for the leather bits. And then Agrax Earthshade or Nuln Oil is really good again for shading. And that's how you could easily paint this up really quickly as a 10-minute Marine right here. But that's the Soul Drinkers chapter right here. If you get a chance, there are books about the Soul Drinkers that you could look on the Black Library, the official novel. I recommend reading it. But this is all in all just a fun, interesting chapter that you could do. And if you love the color purple, this is your chapter right here. But, anyways, I've been Mike, and this is Mike's Miniatures. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this video and kind of learn how to start this obscure chapter right here. Please like and subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. Let's continue to grow this community. And in the comments, put in what faction you would like to see me next on how we would start a thematic army for an obscure Space Marine chapter. Until then, bye-bye.